Hi, this is Karen Walby Solomon, and welcome to my podcast, Crushing On. Welcome to episode 11. On today's episode, we have Kevin Kriedemann, who is a publicist at Showmax, and he brings us into the life at Showmax, what is happening with Showmax Pro, which was launched last week, and so much more of what is coming and just, great content that we can expect from Showmax. But before we get to that, I wanted to introduce you to a friend of mine who a lot of you have been asking about, Rebecca Barches, who does the sound and editing for the podcast. So she, I mention her in the credits every week, and a lot of people were like, especially people who have been in the podcast and know how much they rant and stuff, were like, who's been editing this? And they're like, how do they edit out all my mistakes and nonsense? So here's Rebecca. Say hi, Rebecca.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm still actually quite nervous to actually be here because I'm usually the one on the back end, just sort of doing my thing, clicking, taking out awkward laughs, taking out awkward comments. So now this is the first for me to be speaking to someone. So if I talk too much or too little, I do apologize.
I mean, you can also just take it out if you talk too much.
I know. That's the beauty of being the editor. I'm going to delete that entire bit that we just recorded.
Like, it'll just be me like, hey, this is Rebecca, and you'll be like, hi, and they'll be like,
yeah. And let's go into the podcast. Exactly.
What I think people don't know, and I actually haven't shared this info much, but like, the fact that you aren't even in the same country as me, you edit all the way in the Netherlands, which I think is kind of crazy and obviously really cool in this day and age.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. I've been here for a few years now, studying, working a little bit, but I came here because of love, which turned out to be a bit of a mistake. But anyway, we won't go into that.
Next episode.
Yeah, maybe never.
Okay, so maybe tell us a bit about why podcast production. Why did you decide to go into that?
Oh, because I had to. No, it was essentially out of necessity. But yeah, the first podcast I actually set up was with someone who had a show on radio, but then it was cancelled, and I just thought it might be cool to sort of explore what it might be like to launch a podcast. And it was challenging, but it was also I learned quite a bit, and I'm still learning. Which is why when you mention my name at the end of the podcast, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want people to know that I've edited this because I feel like I messed up this one. Still feel like there's a lot to learn, and that's why I'm also studying. So my master's is also on podcasting and immersive audio. Yeah, and it's an exciting medium. It's booming. It's definitely becoming. It's been a big thing in the States, but now I think now in South Africa people are more
receptive.
Yeah, exactly. And then also I think it's important that we start amplifying certain voices that haven't been amplified for years. We're not even amplifying, but just having these voices become part of the conversation. And I want to be the editor of these important voices.
That sounds cool.
And yours is one of them, Carrie Ann. I mean, I've listened to you talk nonsense for 17 years now, and I just felt like other people should hear this.
So Crashing On was, originally your idea. So why?
Was it though? I feel like you were putting out the vibes, as you would say. Maybe I planted a bit of a seed in some way, but I think I do think it was a mutual idea, because we did, when we were in high school, we used to say, we're gonna come up with a musical. We're gonna make something one day. And here we are, I guess, making the podcast and other exciting things, hopefully in the future. And so
I always think
it's the perfect time.
If you find somebody who's crazy matches your crazy, something has to be created from that.
Sparks fly. Yeah.
Or else it's such a waste. But yeah, this week on the show we have Kevin, and Kevin made lots of suggestions this week. Of not only of shows on Showmax, like we spoke about Netflix, we spoke about so many different things. I'm not gonna lie and say I've watched any of them this week, because in the work that I was supposed to do, that's what I've been watching. So I know you said you watched quite a few of them. So which of Kevin's suggestions did you enjoy?
Yeah, I mean, like it's only been, what is it, 6 days, 5 days, and while I should have been editing, I binge watched my way through Love Life with Anna Kendrick and Rami, and I enjoyed both. But I'm like, Kevin came up with quite interesting suggestions, especially local as well, which you'll hear about in the podcast. But also, like the other weeks when other people have suggested things, I ended up listening. Ever since listening to your podcast in slow motion whilst editing, I managed to actually jot down things that might be quite entertaining. And so we can go through the list of things I've watched since I started listening to your podcast, but we don't have that much time, I don't think.
I think for me also, like there's such a long list of things I still want to get to, which people suggested. And like, I know that on Andy's episode, he was like quite threatening. He was like, if I see you tweeting about things that are not the things that I suggest, and yet I've still not watched any of the things he suggested. But like, I started watching Schitt's Creek about a week ago, because I was like, people keep bringing this up on the podcast. I need to actually start watching the show. But,
what did you think? Did you like it?
No, I mean, I'm still in season 2, but it is so funny, and it's something nice that I can, because there's a lot of things that I watch alone on my laptop that, things I have to review and things that are quite hectic, because I know if I watch it in the lounge with like my family around them, they're all going to give comment. So Schitt's Creek is nice because I can sit down and watch it. Like if anybody else wanders into the lounge, they can watch it with my nephew. He quite enjoys it as well. So he will, like in the odd times when he's around and he's not studying or whatever, he will come in and watch an episode, and he can leave and he can come back 5 episodes later, and he will still you might just need a bit of a primer, but he will know what's going on. My sister's already seen the show, but she comes and she sits down and she rewatches some episodes with me. So I think it's got that nice kind of family feel to it. Anybody can enjoy it. But yeah, also like to the listeners, if anybody, I mean, last week we had the clip of Andy sending in what Teen Wolf meant to him. So like if anybody else watches something after the show and wants to give any sort of feedback, just like send in a voice note or like email us and we will read it out. Whatever you tweet us, or those like or DM us. That makes more sense because people tweet us a lot. But like send us a message and tell us like, for the podcast, please read this out. And we will read it out, because it's great to hear what other people's perspectives, because the whole point of the podcast is that we're hearing suggestions and like different voices of different people and what they like, what they enjoy. So it'll be great to also get like the broader perspective of it as well. It's not just the two of us like talking into an echo chamber all the time.
I think you mentioned it one week where you're like, it does make it all worthwhile when you see someone tweeting about the interview. I mean, we do have fun, at least from my side, listening to these interviews. I have a lot of fun just listening to them, and I'm assuming you have fun when you interview people. It adds that extra bit of spark.
It is, because I mean, it's like, we're doing this as a hobby and we're spending so much time doing it, but it's great to know that like that people actually enjoy it. So we're not going to keep you any longer. This is the interview with Kevin. So Kevin spoke about a lot of different shows, and you're probably going to want to jot it down, but don't worry, we made a list that's available on the website with all the info to all the shows that he mentioned. So yeah, he goes into quite a lot of detail about the different shows. So which is really cool, which isn't just a list. He tells you what it's about, why it's important, why it's interesting to watch. And that's why we thought that he would be such a great person to chat to on this podcast. Like, I've known him for a while. I've worked with him at Cosmo and all the various other media places that I've worked at. He's very knowledgeable. He's very interesting. But we're going to enter into the interview where I start asking him about the future of binge watching, because I think it's such a poignant topic right now, especially with like the boom we're getting right now with Netflix and Showmax now launching Showmax Pro. it's just a very interesting thing to talk about in a very interesting time. So yeah, yes, Kevin. So how do you see like a changing going forward?
It's changing all the time. And I mean, as much as I say I'm such a big fan of binging, it's been really interesting for me that we're back in the world of weekly releases on streaming sites. Everyone seems to be doing that as well. People are starting to experiment now with batch releases, which is kind of halfway between the two. So you'll wait 4 weeks and put out 4 episodes to binge in one go, and then wait another 4 weeks to put up the next 4. Or what we're doing with Love Island UK at the moment, where we're putting up kind of the week's worth on the weekend so that people can binge. So it's all changing. Showmax has just announced Showmax Pro, which is another big change. It's bringing live sport into the streaming mix. So hopefully that's going to be a game changer, bringing you kind of the best of Hollywood, the best of local, and the best of sport. And admittedly, at this stage, it's really the best of soccer plus athletics and boxing. But I think that's just a start, and it's going to move quickly from there. So I think a whole lot of different things are changing. Overseas, it feels a little bit like we're already past the golden age of streaming internationally, and feels like we're entering the age of fragmentation. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. What I mean by that is that if you wanted to watch everything on Showmax and you were based in America, you would probably have to have 6 subscriptions right now. So I do think that Showmax is giving you one of the better streaming experiences in the world, content-wise, right now, because of that, because we are still able to bring you HBO content, which is on HBO Max now in the States, and we're able to bring you stuff from Hulu, and we're able to bring you from kind of Disney Plus and these places that in the States are all at war with each other and are not selling content sideways. So I think that's going to be interesting to see. But I think we're safe in a South African setting for the short term, at least.
Yeah, which is good. I mean, I don't know if you can answer this, but I'm just going to ask anyway. Are we going to be getting more Disney Plus content? Because I know that MultiChoice had that thing with Beyonce. So I don't know if you can say. But
I can't comment anything exciting on it, unfortunately. I mean, I do think that Black is King coming is a wonderful example. And I think it would have been horrible if they did something that was so inspired by Africa and not make it available in Africa. I think that's the recipe for piracy. So good on them for doing that. So I hope so. But again, we'll have to see. I think at this stage, so much is up in flux at the moment. And it's a changing playing field. I can't announce that The Mandalorian is coming on set day, which I know is what everyone wants to know.
Yeah, it's nominated for an Emmy and we can't even watch it yet. Like, it's not nice. But so with regards to sports now being available on Showmax Pro, do you see a move between people, watching still sports live but on Showmax, or do you think that people will watch it later as people did with with catch up and that kind of thing? Or how do you foresee?
It's not my area of speciality, so I think I used to love sport, and then I had kids, and then I realized I didn't have time for everything, and I needed to really start picking and choosing. So I'm not as up to date on sports as I'd like to be by any means, but I've been fascinated by the fact that for a lot of people, live event viewing is still a thing and is going to remain a thing. And I think what's so powerful about live event viewing is that it's everyone having one experience at the same time, seeing the comments. It's a shared experience in a way that I think one of the things I miss about the binge era is that we're all watching different things at different times. And it's often really hard to have those conversations because everyone's watched maybe one episode or has heard about it, but not everyone has watched the same thing as you. So I think sport lends itself to staying live, but I do also think it's exciting that there are going to be potentials for more catch-up. But I think it's really something that Showmax has been kind of experimenting with, and we're learning rapidly. So I wouldn't want to give you any set answers at this stage. I think we're just going to learn a lot as we go.
Yeah. But the live event thing is kind of interesting because I remember when Game of Thrones used to come on at 3 a.m. on Mnet, and you'd see South Africans up at a time that they were never up, like all watching this at the same time. It was such an exciting, and I wonder like how that's, how I feel like that won't go away. We'll just move into some other form in the binge era.
So one of the things that was interesting for me with lockdown was we introduced news to Showmax for the first time.
Oh, okay.
And news was also incredibly popular. And again, I think it's one of those things that and it was live stream news, and it's just one of those things that works better as a live stream. No one wants to pick and choose their news after the fact. The whole point of it is that you're turning on your TV to find out what's happening now. So I think we are entering into a more hybrid stage. And in some ways, what's interesting is that's mirroring Showmax's process in itself, where when it first launched, it was a separate unit it was its own company within Naspers. And then a couple of years later only, it was merged into MultiChoice. So I think a lot of what Showmax's journey has been recently is that process of being integrated into kind of the broader MultiChoice family and understanding that mindset. And it's an interesting combination that I think it's a really good combo if we can really figure out what the best of the old world and the new world is. We'll be in a great place.
So how did you end up at Showmax?
So I've always worked in either film or media. So I started off kind of reviewing films at about 19 as my first job. And I ended up running the Call Sheet, which was a film industry trade, at about 21. And I had 5 years there, really getting to chat to the South African film industry as it started to boom and chat to the people who were doing the most interesting things. So it was a wonderful education. And I also edited the Filmmaker's Guide to South Africa, which was an annual selling South African film industry internationally. And I got to write for Variety and The Hollywood Reporter and people like that. So it was really fun. But then, like many journalists, I realized that I was not going to make any more money than I was making then, but I was going to have to keep working harder and harder with smaller and smaller teams. So I jumped ship and moved into the dark arts of publicity on the other side of the fence. And I started working with someone called Joyce Apika, who is a very colorful and wonderful publicist who is in Graham Norton's autobiography and was Sam Mendes' personal publicist when he was doing American Beauty, and had run a very successful PR agency in London, but was now living in Hout Bay and doing things like Encounters Documentary Festival for the love of it. So I helped her out at Encounters, and then Al Jazeera called her and said, hey, do you want to run the PR for Al Jazeera across Africa? And actually at that stage we also ended up doing the UK and even America very briefly, which we told them was a silly idea, but we were doing it all for a while. So we were running that together, and it was wonderful because as a Cape Townian you kind of grow up culturally British and American and knowing not nearly as much about your continent as you should. So I got to learn a whole lot about the continent. And while I was doing that, it wasn't never a full-time job. I was also doing whatever kind of interesting film PR was around. So I got to kind of PR an Oscar-nominated short film called Assad with Egg Films. I got to do kind of music videos for Skrillex with them. I marketed some festivals. I did various other things. And then I was doing some work with Fly on the Wall, and they released their Fok of Polisie Car documentary on Showmax, and I did some PR on that, and it seemed to make an impression on Showmax because they gave me a call soon after to say, hey, they were getting into original programming. They were making Tully's Wedding Diary, and would I like to come on board for that? So I said, sure. And I did it on the side. And that went very well. It was kind of set the record for the most watched thing on Showmax at the time. And they then went, hey, don't you want to come work a little bit more permanently, a little bit more in-house? And the timing just worked because at the same time, our Al Jazeera contract was up for renewal after about 5 years. and Al Jazeera had a whole bunch of embargoes where kind of the neighboring countries were busy shutting their borders with Qatar and putting immense pressure on them, and we knew we weren't going to get our contract signed off quickly enough. So I jumped ship to Showmax and went from writing about world news and stuff where I had to be really, really careful about what I said to writing about TV series and movies again, which was a nice change of pace for me and has been really fun. So yeah, that's the short version, or the shortish version.
What have been your highlights during your time at Showmax?
I mean, getting paid to watch TV is pretty great. I won't lie. I've also just really appreciated the team that I've worked with. I know that's not a particularly exciting thing to say, but it really has been one of the better work experiences of my life. And it's been fascinating because it's been with a remote team, with the boss in Dubai and a blog editor in Zambia and kind of people working remotely across Cape Town. But it's just the most high functioning team I think I've been part of. So I've enjoyed that on a personal level. I think the originals are probably the things that I'm really proud of. I think they've all done amazingly well, and just on a scale that I think probably dwarfs most of the things that I work on. It is really fun when you've got the billboards backing up your PR campaign and kind of you do something like Samizi's wedding and you land up with like 600 plus media placements valued at millions and millions and millions. So Tully's Wedding Diary, The Girl from St. Agnes, Samizi and Mahala, The Union. We've just done Kelly Kamala's reality show, Life with Kelly. Those have all been, it's felt nice to be starting something new and to be starting an era with Showmax and its slightly different commissioning process and a slightly different type of content. I think Showmax gets a freedom that some of the linear channels don't. So I think that's been nice for me, and I think it's also been great for me just to see the way the content has shifted and has kept getting better. And I don't know if I'm answering your question, but on a personal level, I've just enjoyed watching things. I think it's been really nice content.
No, that's 100% answering my question. So I wanted to ask, so what are your current favorites on Showmax?
So I've been fascinated this year because I'm watching a totally different type of content to what I would normally watch. So I think my big discovery in the last year has been kind of 20-minute comedies. So stuff like Barry and What We Do in the Shadows and Rick and Morty. And I'm probably historically more of a drama, crime, slightly more serious 45-minute to an hour. But it's partly I've got two kids. I've got a 6-year-old and an 18-month-old. So getting the chunks of time to binge is a lot harder for me than it's been. And it's partly just with this year. This year is serious enough. Like I feel like anything that makes you laugh just is particularly valuable this year. So I think I've probably been looking out for that a lot more. And then the other thing that I think also got us through lockdown was binging The Walking Dead again, which I gave up for a while. And it's a very counterintuitive thing to watch at a time like this. But I found it really reassuring to go, wow, life can really get a lot worse than this. And people will still want to be alive because actually there is just this will to live that is really deep-seated in all of us. And sure, we've got to live this weird new life with masks, but it's still better than that, the alternatives. And it's also just an exciting show that does kind of take you to another world and out of your reality. So neither of those would naturally be kind of my viewing highlights, but I think this year they really were. I don't just watch Showmax. I think like most people, I've got more than one subscription, and Netflix has had some great things. I loved Sex Education. I loved Unorthodox. I loved Unbelievable. And there's a great British crime show called Jiri Haji, which I also really liked. It's kind of Britain meets Japan crime.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
It is amazing. It won a couple of BAFTAs recently as well, so I would recommend it. So yeah, I think if I've got a downside to my job, it's the fact that I often say I really miss the days of being a film critic, in that there you had your 5 screenings a week, and you could really watch 10 hours of content and be up to date and feel like you knew everything. I feel like there is just so much that it's almost impossible to keep up with. And because I have to be able to talk about lots of things. I mean, we're launching kind of 3 shows a week often. So I do a lot of watching the first episodes of things rather than whole series, which I feel sad about. I'm trying to figure out how to not do that and to actually finish things, because it is so much more enjoyable when you get to just watch from start to finish. And it doesn't feel like it's an hour research for work.
I kind of feel the same with like reviewing TV though, because I'll like watch a season and then something new would come out and I'll watch a new season of something else. But the minute that second season of that old show comes out, I can't get back to, because I'm too busy watching new things.
Yeah. I think, again, it's probably been excellent timing since it's lockdown, and great that no one ran out of anything to watch. But I do feel like it's an impossible job. This idea of one person who knows everything is just not a model that works in the era of peak TV. No one has seen everything. And if you have, you've really got an unbalanced life, and I would suggest you reconsider.
So true. So what exciting new things can we like expect coming up on Showmax? I just finished I May Destroy You. Sorry, I just want to say. And I know that's coming out
soon. Tell me about it. Because
Oh.
I'm always jealous, because I organize screeners for all of you, and I actually don't get to see them myself until they land up on Showmax.
Oh, my
so
word.
What did you think?
It was amazing. Like, I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for that. It was probably one of the best things I'd ever seen. I don't even have the words.
I am hearing that a lot.
Yeah, it really was. Like, I actually want to watch it again. That's how good it was.
And I mean, obviously, with the subject matter, she's exploring date rape. I am worried slightly that people are going to go, "Oh, that's very serious at this time." But by all accounts, it is just intensely watchable. Is that your experience? I mean, did it feel heavy and hard to watch, or did it also make you laugh and actually?
No, like it was like, so
where
weird.
On the scale of it is it?
It's so I'm not going to be eloquent about this. So there are odd moments where I laughed, but it felt inappropriate to laugh, but also it was funny. And you can see she intended it to be funny. Like she'd be in the doctor's office having a checkup, and then she'll be like a vlogger being like, "Hey guys." So just before the doctor gives her like her prognosis, and I'm like, what? But I'm laughing because she's so brilliant at it. Because I watched Chewing Gum, her comedy, and she is so excellent at comedy, but it doesn't take away from the drama that she's bringing in I May Destroy You. Excellent. She's such a good writer.
That's always my favorite. It's like they get you to laugh, drop your defenses, and then they sucker punch you, and you feel it that much more. And I also feel like that's so much more like life. Like, people get through the tough times by laughing about it. I mean, that's exactly what I've just been saying, that I just want to actually watch silly things and laugh right now this year, far more than ever. So I think that all feels very true, sounds very true to me. But I'm very glad you brought that up. So we've got a couple more things this month. We've also got My Brilliant Friend, which is an Italian series that people really love. It's one of IMDb's top-rated series of all times, and it's based on Elena Ferrante's novels. I read the first novel when I was kind of in Italy on holiday, and I loved it. So I do really need to get back and watch the series, but it's not one that I've watched. I'm not going to tell you much about it. It's really just 2 girls growing up together in their friendship and over the course of their lives. The other one that we're getting before the end of the month is Love Life, which is the Anna Kendrick comedy. Yeah. And I think I also sent you links for that. I'm not sure if you
I haven't watched it yet, but you have yet.
That's fine. But I think that's going to do really well for us, just given the fact that so when HBO Max launched, it's the second most watched thing on HBO Max after Friends and ahead of The Big Bang Theory. So it's clearly got an audience. And I really like its central concept, where it's kind of this anthology that follows one woman and all of the relationships that lead up to the relationship that is the one. So I think it's a really healthy view that a kind of relationship that ends is not a failed relationship. which I kind of think is a much healthier, I think, particularly in South Africa, where we can, with quite a conservative, quite religious nation, there's often a lot of pressure on relationships that you get into them because this is going to be the one, and if it's not the one, then why were you ever together? Whereas I'm probably leaning more towards a love life approach to things at the moment. We move and change, and it's all a healthy learning experience. I've heard great things about that. Again, I haven't seen it. The one that I have seen that I'm really excited about, starting on the 1st, is Rami, which is one of my favorite comedies of last year. It got a lot of press at the time when it launched because it's about this Muslim millennial, first generation Egyptian American. And he's really going to mosque and trying to be a good Muslim, but then he's also on Tinder and trying to date and have a fun sex life. And he's trying desperately to reconcile these two aspects of himself and failing dismally and feeling bad and trying to jiggle it all. But I think anyone who's had any experience of growing up religious will relate. And I think in some ways it got a little bit too pigeonholed when it got released as a kind of Muslim representation comedy, whereas I think it's just a great comedy. So it's got the mum from Succession plays this mum. This new season's got Mahershala Ali, who's just such a great actor from True Detective and Moonlight and things like that. And he won the Golden Globe for Best Actor, and he's up for Emmys, and I'm really hoping that this time around it gets a slightly bigger audience than it did first time around. So that's one I'm really excited about. And then the other that I'm really excited about, but that I haven't seen, is Lovecraft Country, which is HBO's new series.
Yeah, I saw it break, everyone is talking about it. I'm really excited.
Yeah, Lovecraft is kind of, Lovecraftian is kind of code for weird monsters with sci-fi people. And I think I've had one response come back and say, I'm just actually not a horror person. But everyone else just raves about it as this is something like they've never seen before. It's the story of kind of Jim Crow, of a black science fiction nerd at a time of Jim Crow America, where it's really the monsters are more scary in real life than they are in kind of the pages of these books that he's reading. And of course he discovers this Lovecraft country where the monsters are real as well. So I'm really excited about that one. It is also Emmys month, so the Emmys are happening on the 20th. So it's a great time to kind of catch up on all the things that are going to win. And I do think Succession is going to win. It seems like that is the favorite for best drama. And I don't know if you've watched that at all.
I haven't, but it's like 100% what I would enjoy. I know it.
So it's the story of one of these like Murdoch type families who just own the entire media world. And they've got kind of the aging dad who they're all desperately trying to earn his approval and hopefully also take over the company from him. But he's the sort of father who you are never going to win his approval of, let alone have him willingly step out of the way so that you can take over. And they frequently behave abysmally, but it's just this beautifully written show. So I'm trying to finish that off before the Emmys, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it at the moment. I would say if you are going to try watch it, it's one of those ones where you kind of need to give it a couple of episodes, because in the beginning your first reaction is just, oh my gosh, these people are horrible, and then slowly you really get sucked in and care about them. But you do have to get over your, oh my gosh, these people are horrible. He just offered a little kid R1 million to hit a home run and then tore up the check in front of him when the kid didn't. It's yeah.
It actually sounds like my kind of show. Horrible people doing horrible things. I love it.
Yeah. So, and then I'm really happy that Watchmen looks like it's going to win Best Limited Series as well. So I thought that was also excellent. It's a very weird show, and I'm still not entirely sure how to explain it. Kind of masked superhero vigilantes who've become vigilantes because they've been outlawed. But it's fascinating and really fun. And there's also people on on planets, and it's a really surreal head trip of a mini-series, but it's excellent. So
I loved Watchmen so much. And also,
how would you describe it? Because I didn't do a very good job of that.
how would I do that? Same like you, mass vigilantes in the US, in an alternative history US. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like to say anything else would be to give away, which is how I
Good.
felt. Because
I'm glad it's not the only person copping out.
because before I watched it, I had no idea what was going on. Like I was like, okay, I don't know. I've heard about this show, and I was going on a plane, and I downloaded the one episode from Showmax, and I was like, okay, then I have something to watch, and I was like, WTF, this whole episode. I was like, I don't know what is going on. And then I watched the second one, and then I was sold. I was like, no, this is it. The show is unlike anything I've seen before. It's excellent. It really is good. Like I hope it wins. It deserves to win, and especially for genre TV in general. Like give a genre TV a limited series win for once.
It will be great, particularly when you think it's competing against things like, I Know This Much Is True, which is, I mean, Mark Ruffalo is definitely going to win Best Actor, but it's a lot heavier. It's kind of, that's more what you expect from a limited series, a story of kind of paranoid schizophrenic brother and how you never give up on love even when sometimes you maybe should. So yeah, and then I really hope Rick and Morty wins Best Animation as well. I really loved Rick and Morty this year as well. I was probably also really late to in the animation stakes, but it's just crazy. I don't know if you've watched it at all.
I've not.
So I mean, it's a sci-fi animated comedy, but the bits that really, and it's really about this dysfunctional grandfather who comes to live with his daughter, and then takes her son off on these adventures across the galaxy. And the sci-fi stuff is kind of equal parts silly and really clever at the same time. But the bits that I love about it are the family dynamics, where they get into kind of just these very fraught family tensions in an animated program. So I think it will win, and I'm also rooting for it to win. And then just local-wise, because I do think so much of the stuff that is really interesting is local these days, I'd give a shout-out to Knuckle City, which is Jamil Kabeka's film. It's kind of a aging boxer coming back for one last fight type story, shot in the Eastern Cape. It was the most awarded film at the SAFTAs last year. And he's just a very good filmmaker. You really feel the punches as they land. And he's making the next Showmax original, which I'm also really excited about, which is called Blood Psalms, which is, I think, the most ambitious thing I've seen coming out in a while. It's kind of a pre-colonial ancient Africa mythology series, like Game of Thrones, shot in the Eastern Cape on location. I've been looking at the pictures coming in, and they are gorgeous. So I think it's like nothing. It's definitely the most ambitious TV thing made here that I've seen, and that includes all the Netflix originals that they've been making here. Which I've been a little bit underwhelmed with. I know I'm biased, but I think there have been some wonderful filmmakers. Like I really love the Nasipa Domisa. I loved Norma 37, and I loved Ellen that Darren Joshua made, and I was very underwhelmed by Blood and Water. But I think it's sometimes difficult when you go from making these really kind of local area specific things, and then you try and suddenly think about a global audience and explaining things to a global audience, and I think things get diluted like that. So I think they'll get it right. I think Netflix will find the balance, but I've been a bit underwhelmed so far. What did you think?
Oh, Blood and Water. I enjoyed it. I mean, I don't know. I just thought maybe there should have been more episodes or something, because I felt like just like there wasn't enough. Like I didn't understand enough, if that makes sense. Like there should have been like more meat on some of the bones. So I hope that, they take into account all the feedback, and then season 2 is better. But
yeah, and it's so great that they're getting a season 2, and I'm excited for that.
Yeah,
so
but it also
I'll be pretty strong on the next one.
I'm a big fan of Ellen, big fan of Norma 37, But yeah, it was nicer to see them do something that's a little bit lighter, because those movies were all like,
Yeah.
because I watched Normal
I'm not sure I would
37
have.
recently with my parents, and they were like looking away. They were, well, my mom was. My dad was like watching everything, but my mom was like
Yeah,
pretending to
that's
read a
one
book.
painful.
Yeah. But it's a good, and it's amazing, and they make good hard eating stuff, which does give me hope that they can do more.
Absolutely, and they'll get there.
Yeah.
I think it's exciting time. I think it's exciting time in general. That I think what Netflix coming into the market has done is it's making everyone be more ambitious, and that's a good thing. A little bit of competition is good, and I think if you look at the stuff coming out of multi-choice, like things like Gomorrah and The Republic, like there's just, or The River getting international Emmy nominations, there's just a really nice wave of filmmakers coming through who are all being quite ambitious about what they want. I do think we're in a better space than we were kind of 5-10 years ago. It's also been a really difficult time for the film industry in the last couple of months, particularly if you were paying your bills with international films, which clearly is a sector that no longer exists, for now at least.
We spoke a few weeks ago to an assistant director, and she was saying that she still has hope, that she knows that this is like a time that, you can't determine, and it's a difficult time, but she still has hope that because our industry is so good and there's so many talented people in South Africa, that the minute, international borders are open, the minute we can do more, that it will pick up again. So, I feel like people are hopeful that things will change. And I feel like people's talents are being recognized. We're having so many diverse and great, screenwriters, directors, production designers, like costume designers. There's so many different people, whereas before, I think, especially when I was younger, you'd see the same people working. And I know they did such a lot of like open up the industry calls and stuff like that. And I feel like the industry is opening up, maybe slowly, but it's opening up. And there's so many great new things.
I'd agree with all of that.
I was going to ask you, like, I was literally about to talk to you about local, because one struggle I always had with local is that there was so much content that used to come on TV every day, and it's so difficult to keep up with content. So if somebody like me, I watch a few, but I don't think I watch enough. But what would you suggest is like good local content to get your feet in the water?
So, it's a difficult question because it does depend on what you're interested in, and it is so specific. I think we've been on quite a journey of making quite separate, like I think our industry is still quite divided. We still seem to, there's an Afrikaans industry, there's kind of a Joburg industry, there's a Cape Town industry, and they're all quite different and telling quite different types of stories at the moment. But yeah, so what have I seen recently that I really liked? I think it's nice to frame it not just as what's good South African stuff that you can watch, but what's good African things that you can watch. So I really loved a film called Supermoto, which is from Kenya.
Loved it.
It's wonderful.
Loved it so much. Beautiful.
And I do think I always laugh a little bit because I do think as South Africans we've had a bit of a chip on our shoulder a little bit, and we like to think that we are miles ahead of the rest of the continent, and we're really not. There's some wonderful filmmakers on the continent, so that's a good one to start with. There's a really great documentary that came out on Showmax earlier this year called How to Steal a Country, which is Rahad Desai's take on the Guptas and those years, and I think it's just a good way to get up to speed, and there's something different about watching people lie to your face than there is about reading about it in the papers, and there's something quite amazing about just watching that amount of money leave your country in kind of a short condensed time of watching a movie. So that will make you feel a lot of things. Telenovela wise, The River is excellent, and has an international Emmy nomination to back that up. And I think Gomorrah is excellent, but Yeah, I think Gomorrah was really strong. So those are probably the two telenovelas that you want to start off with. I think we're having a reality TV moment, but again, that depends on how you feel about reality TV. But Kwamama Mkiza, Sumisi and Mahale, Life with Kelly. And Life with Kelly is quite nice in that it's a change and that it's not all glitzy in a way that a lot of the kind of being banangs and things have been. It's just been about kind of quite materialistic. Kelly's is a little bit more complex than that. And then there's an Afrikaans series called Alles Milan. There's an Mnet, which I thought was also beautifully put together, about kind of the liberal son coming back with his family from Australia to take over the family business from his very conservative dad, and then discovering that his daughter was pregnant and wondering if he had got his liberal values all wrong. And it's that sort of a small family drama. There's Still Breathing, which was on Mnet, for people who kind of want a This Is Us type feeling in a South African context. So there's a bunch of little things like that I think would all be worth checking out. Tally's Wedding Diary for a laugh, if you know the Sea Point world and want to laugh at it. The Girl from St. Agnes is a murder mystery. And then one that I also really liked, which was called The Republic, which is about South Africa's, it's set in a parallel South Africa, so same time frame, but we've got a female president and she's busy rooting out corruption, and you see the previous president go to jail in the first episode, which is kind of a wonderful wish fulfillment type feeling. And then she lands up in a township protest that's gone wrong, and it's just well made and fast paced, with some great acting in it. So there's a lot of stuff, but it really depends on your taste. And I'm probably particularly excited for Blood Psalms, which will be out next year. I do think it's a scale bigger. And I also loved Canary. That's the other one that I really loved, which again is easy to skip because it's a kind of Afrikaans war movie, but it's not that at all. It's kind of the story of a very camp guy in the army and who doesn't fit in. It's a fish out of water comedy, but it's also really just beautiful and moving, and Skulk Bezuidenhout is wonderful in it. So I thought that was excellent as well. So yeah, that's a few of the things that run through my head when you say that. Rafiki, which is a Kenyan lesbian love story, is also great. It's one of those films that kind of starts with a woman on a skateboard in Nairobi and a great soundtrack, and it's just got she talks about Afro bubblegum. She's got a great TED talk on it, which is really about the fact that African films have tried she goes to festivals and people keep asking her, like, what does your film mean? How is it changing things? And ironically, this one really is, because it's a lesbian film from Kenya, which ended up getting banned there. But it's really about the warmth and the joy and just showing kind of two people in love in Kenya, which I think is an approach to filmmaking that I like. I like kind of more of a genre approach, more of a let's show humanity in how people feel rather than try and make a point primarily. It's a bit of a waffle, but I hope you know what I mean.
So what would you say is like your all-time favorite series? Like, out of everything?
Oh gosh, that's a mean question. I don't know. I mean, there've really been so many for me, and again, unfortunately, because I just process so many on a weekly basis, it's really hard. I mean, I think there was something really fun about the first. Maybe I'm just getting old and nostalgic, but there was really something fun about the era of like Californication and Nip Tuck and all of these kind of edgy shows that just felt really fresh. But I think that was also just because at that stage I didn't have kids and I could binge so much faster and really lose yourself in things. So I don't know. I would need to give that some thought. Yeah, I would need to give that some thought.
No problem.
Movie-wise, something like Little Miss Sunshine, weirdly.
Oh, okay.
I loved Little Miss Sunshine. But yeah, I'm quite all over the place as well because I don't have a set genre. I'm not one of these people who's like, I just want to watch action movies. I just want to watch sci-fi. I kind of just want to watch the things that are really good. And if it's really good and I like the characters, I'll relate to it. So I feel like I've got to brush up my filing system and really give that some thought.
No, it's a difficult question. I just feel like you can tell so much
yours? What would you say?
There's this show, I don't know if you remember. It's called Popular. It was Ryan Murphy's first show. It's like a teen drama, but it's very campy. And I just love it. I love that show so much. But I suppose Game of Thrones too, maybe.
Yeah, less so the last season.
Yeah, not the last season. Yeah, the first few seasons of Game of Thrones. I don't think anything has ever shocked me as much as Game of Thrones. But yeah, but like the lovable show, I think Popular is it.
I think that's part of what makes the TV series question so hard as well, because I often feel like I love things more in the first season than I do by the last season. It's just I sometimes feel like there's this law of diminishing returns, which is why I love the British shows so much. Yeah. Like I love things like Broadchurch and these smaller self-contained things, because there's so many shows that I absolutely adored in season 1 that by the time you get to kind of season 7, 8, 9, you're a little bit less convinced.
Like it should have like a time. Like I do think that like if your show has a set time, that's good. Go on, make something else. The minute it gets and start making too much money and they start dragging it out and it becomes the same thing, that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah, so I loved The Killing, I loved Borgen, I loved a lot of the Scandi Noir stuff. But it's a tough one to call, but probably something that was standalone in one season, but and that finished and gave me a really satisfying ending.
Like limited series vibes. So thank you so much for doing this. It was so great meeting you.
It was really fun.
Thank you.
Just got to actually do it in person.
Yes.
Ideally somewhere with a bit of wine over lunch.
That would be lovely.
As soon as we don't have to do that with masks, I will be in touch.
Remember the time when we had to put like adjectives in front of our names? And you said when you were small, you used to say Rabbit Rebecca.
Well, I feel like you're shortening the whole little thing I told you. So we were at this church function, and then we had to go down the circle, and they asked us to put an adjective in front of our name that is the same letter as our name. And I was maybe 7 years old, 8 years old, and I was like, what the heck is an adjective? I'm still learning English, and which I still am. And everyone was like, Wacky Whitney, Awesome Astrid. And when it was my turn, I ended up saying Rabbit Rebecca. And people laughed. And at that point, I thought, okay, maybe I should be a stand-up comedian. But I didn't understand why people were laughing.
You knew what a stand-up comedian was, but you didn't know what an adjective was.
Yeah, I knew my whole past and how I was going to live my life, but I did not know what an adjective meant.
So yeah, I just had to tell that one embarrassing story.
Thank you. I'm sure there are more to come.
Okay, anyway, that was Kevin Kriedemann, publicist at Showmax. You can find him on Twitter and Instagram at Kevin Kriedemann. And you can find Showmax at Showmax Online. Link to everything that we spoke about will be in the show notes, so check it out. Otherwise, you can find at Karen Welby on Instagram and at Karen Welby's with an S on Twitter. And don't forget to sign up for my newsletter, wildstreams.substack.com. As always, links will be in the show notes. The podcast you can find at Crushing on Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and we now on Facebook too. Whoop whoop! You can like our page. We'll give you exclusive content. I don't know what that exclusive content is going to be yet, but we will do that. You can also visit our website, which is crushingonpodcast.com, or email us at crushingonpod@gmail.com. We welcome any and all feedback. Tell us what you liked, what you didn't like. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We are everywhere: Spotify, Stitcher, Podcatcher, Kostian, I don't know. All of those things. All episodes are edited and produced by Rebecca Barches. Thank you so much for listening. Tune in again next week. Next week, we're going to be joined by one of my oldest friends, and we'll probably share a lot more goss and spill some tea on both mine and Rebecca's past. It's going to be fun. It's going to be problematic, but please tune in.